This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome. You've heard and read the spin the media and the politicians have put on the issues of the day. To get the correct spin on what's going on in North Carolina, let's introduce you to our panel of experts. They include political consultant Brad Crone, John Hood with the John Locke Foundation, Chris Fitzsimon with NC Policy Watch, and Becki Gray with the John Locke Foundation. Well, as we head into Christmas, we want our panel to look ahead to the legislative session that begins January 4th and tell us what they think was going to happen. We'll discuss how local governments can replace the revenues they're going to lose from the privilege tax, and we'll ask whether there's a conservative agenda to the UNC Board of Governors study of 30 centers and institutes. We've got a full show, so let's get started. Senate President Pro Tem Phil Berger will arguably be the most powerful politician in our state next year, so when he speaks, people want to hear what he has to say. In an interview recently, Berger was asked what we could expect from next year's General Assembly, and while he didn't provide many specifics, he did indicate this session would focus on the business of managing the state, a similar theme of incoming Speaker Tim Moore. Question went to Becki. Do you agree, first of all, that Berger is going to probably be the principal player in next year's session? And what do you see as the priority items this legislature will tackle?
Well, of course, Senator Berger will be one of the key principal players. We have a new Speaker of the House, Tim Moore, who we'll see how he plays into this. But, of course, he's got 73 votes in the House and will be controlling that body. And then, of course, the governor will have quite a bit of power because he's the governor. Some of the things that they're going to be looking at, don't forget, too, that Senator Berger has been the president of the Senate since the Republicans took over in 2011. So he has been there through these transformational changes that have occurred with repaying the unemployment debt, tax reform, regulatory reform, education reform, infrastructure reform, all of these things. So at this point, it seems to me that the focus is going to be on, we're kind of getting these indications from Senator Berger and Tim Moore as well, that now is the time to govern, to let these reforms take place, to sort of continue the momentum that they have started. So that's what I think we're really going to see. Some of the issues that we're already see are going to have to be dealt with. Medicaid expansion, Medicaid reform certainly is something that's been left over that still they haven't quite been able to figure out. Continued spending reforms I think we're going to see within the budget. As the economy starts to return, getting more people back to work, we'll see more economic development kind of things occurring.
I think Becki's absolutely right. Medicaid's going to be a huge issue at the top. Medicaid reform, and whether you're going to have accountable care organizations or you're going to have managed care or you're going to have a bifurcated system in the state. Transportation is going to be another huge issue in the state that I think legislature is going to look at. There'll be a huge debate on the borrowing capacity of the state, and do you do certificates of participation or do you look at a general obligation bond going into 2016?
With huge infrastructure and perhaps as much as $1 billion in spending.
It's a brilliant political move, because if you do a COPS, then you get access to that money in the second and third quarter of the fiscal year, and that could generate a lot of jobs in eastern and western North Carolina.
But you pay more for interest. One of the things that Berger alluded to, John, was financial issues so far as the state is concerned. And obviously one of them is the fact that the media is reporting that the revenues for the first 5 months of the year are $190 million less than what we received this past year. How big an issue of finance is going to be?
Well, it's 190 during the first 5 months of the fiscal year. It's 190 million below their expectations, not the same as compared to last year. They're still not exactly sure what happens. You can't just, if you just draw a straight line projection from the first 5 months, then you'd end up with lower than expected revenues of 400 million or more. But what they're not assuming that, because what they believe, and I think there is some evidence to suggest this, that November and December, the sales tax revenues and some other revenues will come in fairly well, and that the tax reform had as one of its effects changing how people withheld or didn't withhold money for taxes, not just individual workers, but also businesses. Remember that for several years we had a temporary exclusion of self-employment income. Some people who have self-employment income, professionals, small business owners, may have gotten used to that and not adjusted, and therefore they may owe more money than they were expecting coming in April. So we'll see how
they're going to get an
out.
April surprise.
Definitely, if there is anything more than a modest difference between revenue projections and revenue reality, that'll be a key issue in 2015.
Well, no, I was going to say a couple of things. First of all, it's interesting. Senator Berger, I agree, is probably the most powerful politician in Raleigh. You know, it's not too many years ago when Republicans were clamoring for leaders in the state House and the state Senate to only serve 2 terms. When Mark Basnight was there for a long time, this is Senator Berger's 3rd term, and I'm wondering if we're going to start hearing people say, hey, we thought, in fact, there was a bill to have term limits for legislative leaders, so that's one thing. I'm also interested in the specific issues that the governor and Senator Berger disagree on. Governor McCrory is now mounting a campaign to restore the historic tax credit, which the Speaker designee or Speaker-to-be Tim Moore supports. Senator Berger, Senator Rucho, and others in the Senate don't want to do that. Brad and Becki mentioned Medicaid expansion. I think McCrory is
Medicaid reform, for Pete's sake. They can't agree on anything there.
The Republican governor of Tennessee just unveiled a plan to, in effect, use more a private approach to have Medicaid expansion. He's worked out a deal with the federal government. I think pressure will increase, whether you like it or not, on North Carolina beginning to be an outlier. Soon we're going to have more than 30 states that have expanded Medicaid. I think Governor McCrory at some point will want to do that. And I think Senator Berger clearly does not. So one of the interesting, I think, things about this next legislative session will be the relationship between those 2 folks.
How about education? There's always education issues. I mean, we're going to see more teacher pay. We're going to see this core curriculum committee coming up with some ideas.
I think on education, you've got, you just mentioned the Common Core state standards proposal and the commission that's looking at it. I think they'll report back sometime this year, and it'll be an issue. I'm not sure what legislative action will occur. On teacher pay, very important issue. Depending upon revenues, they're going to want to do something to continue to advance teacher pay, but I think the governor's folks are going to turn back towards their original plan. We need to start putting compensation based upon performance into the mix.
How about the proposal that died at the end of last session, Economic Development Bill 1228, particularly the JDIG grants? We're going to see those restored?
I don't know that we'll see those specific restored. I think that there's going to be attention on these grants, on incentive programs. What's happened over the last couple of years is there's been a real discussion with the film incentives and this historic preservation tax credit of are we getting a bang for our buck? Should we continue to do this, whether it's for film, whether it's for historic buildings, or whether it's in general?
I think the private non-sector agreement that they've got working out with the foundation is going to draw a lot of scrutiny next year, too. You've had 2 years to get this thing up and running. Are you producing results?
Well, you can count on the fact that as it unfolds, we're going to be talking about it. You can have additional video content from our website, ncspin.com, and you can read and see these NC Spin perspectives only on that website or NC Spin on Facebook. And we're tweeting now at NC Spin Tweets. Balanced debate for the Old North State. When we come back, the Christmas list for cities and towns.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
My name is Bernie Teal. Sunburst Farms has been in my family for over 35 years. Last year I had to do something I'd never done before. Destroy 10 acres of good squash. I wasn't able to find enough workers. The opportunity is there. American families are demanding locally grown vegetables, and I want to provide that to them. So please tell Congress that we need immigration reform now.
I sit in my exam rooms day after day with patients all day long. We get to know our patients. Sometimes I can't sleep at night if I don't think I've done the very best thing for my patient. And I think over time a patient learns that that's what you're doing for them, and they feel a responsibility to try to do the best they can, to follow their diet, to take their medicines, to exercise. It should be up to us to make the decision for our patients and not some bureaucrat, hired gun, 2,000 or 3,000 miles away in a little cubicle somewhere. I think the job is ours. We're the ones who know the patients. We know the medicine. We know what's best for them, and we think it should be our decision.
North Carolina's family physicians support Medicaid reform that keeps healthcare decisions right where they belong, between the patient and their trusted family physician. OurNCHealthcare.com.
You sleep on concrete till your body get immune to concrete.
My mom got my brother and I up and said, come on, we're leaving.
I became homeless in the beginning of this year.
When I was about 4 or 5 years old, our house caught fire.
I used to see my brother. If he see me, he'd turn and go the other direction.
We did the only thing that we could think of, and we went to a Salvation Army shelter.
You know, we don't have this, like, what's your background look like? We just say, what do you need?
I remember the man from the Salvation Army coming down with a box of clothes.
The Salvation Army officer bought my brother and I an ice cream cone.
Last week, my brother walked up to me, and he just started a conversation.
Today I've given my life to the Salvation Army because I remember what somebody did for me, my brother, and my mom over 30 years ago.
The Salvation Army for me means hope.
Compassion.
Family.
Support.
One in 5 North Carolinians can't buy healthy foods in their communities, increasing their risk of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and some forms of cancer. Learn more at accesshealthyfoodsnc.org.
We now return to NC Spin.
It's almost that time of year again, and not only are the boys and girls making out their Christmas wish list, but so are many groups and organizations. The cities and towns in North Carolina are wishing for revenues to replace the $62 million they're going to lose in privilege taxes come June 30th. Governor Pat McCrory, former mayor of Charlotte, spoke to the League of Municipalities recently and remembered that lawmakers had promised to help them find replacement revenues. We're interested in figuring out how to make up that revenue and give you more options at the city and county level regarding revenue streams, McCrory said. Conservatives say municipalities should cut their budgets and do less, but local leaders say they don't have many options to fill the hole privilege taxes leave. Chris, local leaders don't have those options, as they say, but most are saying they're going to probably be forced to raise property taxes to raise revenues. Lawmakers and the governor said they're going to help them find ways to fill in that hole. What do you think they might do?
Well, I don't know. This will be another facet. We talked in the earlier segment about interesting issues this session. This is one that sort of I think the general public doesn't pay enough attention to, but how local governments raise money, how the state handles reimbursements. There has been, we've talked about on this show about changing the way sales taxes are allocated in North Carolina to counties. I think this is all going to be part of the mix. The frustrating thing, I think, here is that the General Assembly could have figured this out before they repealed the privilege tax, and I think there was some pressure to do that, but they instead wiped it out. It's much harder to get something reinstated than it is to get it modified when it's in place. This is another one of those issues, like maybe Medicaid expansion, certainly the historic tax credit, where I think the governor is going to disagree primarily with the Senate leadership. This will be one of the most fierce battles of the session.
Brad, the league wants the legislature to give them taxing authority in the cities. The counties currently have sales tax authority. They've got property tax authority. Any chance that's going to happen?
No, just like they wanted authority to do real estate transfer taxes and at the county level and municipal level. And, I don't think there's any appetite at the legislative level to grant a lot of tax authority to either the county governments or the municipal governments. And I think at the end of the day, it's a strategic plan to ratchet down the size and scope of government. And that's what you've got with the Republican legislature, and like it or lump it.
Becki, Senator Bob Rucho, who one of the more powerful senators, says he wants to change the way the distribution formula is handled so far as sales taxes and give more of it based on a per capita population distribution and less of it on where the sale was actually made on sales taxes. Is there a growing movement? I sort of sense that there may be some growing support for that.
Well, we'll see as they go into the session. Senator Rucho is interested in making additional changes to the tax structure, and the sales tax reconfiguration, redistribution is certainly one of those things that he's looking at. But I think a lot of these, the privilege tax, local authority to tax, that was something that came up at the very end of the session that really didn't go anywhere. But there's a lot of those things left on the table, a lot of those questions of how the local sales tax, local taxing authority works with the state and who's going to pay for what. And but I agree with Brad. I think that the overall intent and goal is to lower the tax burden overall.
Well, it's important to keep in mind, though, that this idea of locals getting more taxing authority, particularly sales tax authority, has been a perennial issue in the legislature since at least 1965, when there was a serious effort made to give at that point, the first opportunity for local option sales taxes. So counties and cities and the people who are elected to run them have, for more than 2 generations, desperately wanted an alternative to the property tax because people actually know what the property taxes are, and when they pay them, it makes them mad. Sales taxes, people are under the illusion that somebody else pays them.
Is that really the biggest objection? I mean, local leaders are saying that the property taxes, you keep raising property taxes, is going to hurt economic development.
But the sales tax has a more direct effect on the economy than the property tax does. This is really about politics. It is less unpopular to raise sales taxes than it is to raise property taxes. That's all you need to know to understand this issue for 50 years.
There's a growing tension, Brad, between cities and the legislature. We saw in this last session they tried to take away the water system from the city of Asheville. They tried to take away Charlotte Douglas Airport from the city of. Now the town of Boone is suing them because they took away the extraterritorial jurisdiction zoning requirements that are going on there. What's going on between the cities?
Well,
is this a natural tension?
No, it is a growing tension. I think you're absolutely right, and I think the big city mayors and some of the leaders within the League of Municipalities truly do feel like that the Republicans have always preached about small government and allowing folks at the local level to make decisions. They get into power and start micromanaging what they can do at the local level, and it's aggravated them, and that tension you're seeing right now, and you're going to continue to see that tension. When Rucho wants to work on taking over the airport in Charlotte, there's going to be some consequences and repercussions.
Well, Chris, you remember the day when cities would come with what they considered to be local bills, and they just almost ride through the legislature without any real oversight or serious discussion in the majority of cases. That ain't happening anymore.
No, it's not. I mean, the rule of thumb used to be the local delegation would all agree, and now that because there's ideological and philosophical differences, they don't. What's fascinating, again, not to keep saying the same thing, but even if you go back to the Charlotte airport, that was something the Governor McCrory was upset about, and that was one of his own senators who was doing that. So it's the more conservative element of the General Assembly versus a former mayor. I think that's another subplot of this session.
We want to remind you not to forget to tune in our next 2 NC Spin shows. Next week, our panel is going to review 2014 and tell you how these events shaped our state this past year. Should be an interesting show. And we'll name the NC Spin Person of the Year on that show. Our January 4th edition is a special half-hour interview with Governor Pat McCrory. The governor helps us start off the new year by reviewing the year from his perspective and maps out his agenda for 2015. So be sure to catch next week's show over the air, or you can stream it on our website, ncspin.com. And when we come back after these messages, we're going to talk about centering on centers.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
Hi, I'm Linda Loveland. I want the best for my kids. Feeding them foods they like within my budget is a priority. But what do we really know about these foods? North Carolina farmers and food experts give you a website to find it all. FeedTheDialogueNC.com, a place where moms like you and me can learn more about the foods we eat and the farmers that feed us. Check it out. Add your input and help feed the dialogue. Let's talk food at FeedTheDialogueNC.com.
The best part about being a member of a Touchstone Energy Cooperative is that it's your Touchstone Energy Cooperative. Learn more about the power of your co-op membership at TogetherWeSave.com.
North Carolina's Touchstone Energy Cooperatives, looking out for you.
Do you love the history and art of North Carolina? Then you'll want a copy of Southport's Art Newton, a stunning 160-page coffee table book filled with the beautiful watercolors of coastal Carolina artist Art Newton. Southport's Art Newton was published by Southport native and noted North Carolinian Tommy Harrelson, and is filled with brilliant paintings of the buildings, boats, and beaches of southeastern Carolina. Look for Southport's Art Newton at local bookstores across the state or purchase it online at Amazon.
How will North Carolina compete in a future where everything is accelerated? Join state leaders February 9th and 10th at the Raleigh Convention Center for the 30th Annual Emerging Issues Forum. Explore how innovators are thriving and how North Carolina can keep pace. Register now at emergingissues.org.
We now return to NC Spin.
Since 1985, Bloomberg reports, the cost of college has increased 538%, far outstripping wage increases and the cost of inflation. Now, the legislature's made it clear they want the Board of Governors and the UNC administration to cut expenses and lower cost of higher education, or at least rein in the cost increases in recent years. There's some 240 centers and institutes within the 16-campus system, annually receiving $69 million in state funding, and the Board of Governors is studying more than 30 of them to determine if they can be cut, funding reduced, and in some instances perhaps even expanded. Brad, why examine just 30? There's some people that are saying the BOG just targeted those centers that conservative groups oppose. What's your take?
I don't buy that at all. I think that some of them were questionable and have been of interest to legislators who have been tracking their service over a long period of time. But I get a sense that there's a mood across the state that they want more accountability and more fiscal responsibility coming out of our university system. And that ought to start with the centers. And Tom, it ought to go beyond just the centers. We ought to be looking at programs in all of the institutions across the state, what's effective, and where can we save money to keep or to ratchet down the ever-increasing tuition rate hikes.
But Chris, some of this, I mean, you got to admit, some of this looks kind of interesting here. I mean, they've singled out Jim Hunt's Institute for Emerging Issues. They've got Gene Nichols' Center for Poverty. They've got the Center for Civil Rights. It does look like there's an agenda, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know. It's either there's agenda or it's a big coincidence that the vast majority of the ones that are getting the most detailed study seem to be the ones that the conservatives. And remember, this is a Board of Governors entirely elected by the Republican General Assembly. I think there might be one Democratic member who gives money to Republicans and one unaffiliated member. All the rest are all Republicans. I think they were disappointed to find out that whatever you think of Gene Nichols, his center, I think, gets less than $40,000 of state money. I think they were surprised to learn that. Some of the centers that they're the maddest about don't actually get that much state money. One other point, I talked to a guy at NC State who was telling me some of the centers, not necessarily on the short list, but on the longer list, are nothing more than if somebody, say, in civil engineering hooking up with somebody in biology, they work together, they get a federal grant, they get a small amount of state money to hire an administrative assistant, they call themselves a center because they get federal funding, which helps the university.
Okay, so Becki, what's your expectation? What's going to happen out of all this studying?
Well, I think that some of those centers are going to be closed down, and I think those decisions are going to be well made. You know, already, just this examination, 10 of the centers have closed down already. But some of these, I mean, you know, the Gene Nichols thing, the Jim Hunt emerging issues, I mean, I would think that they would welcome a scrutiny of looking at where do you get your money, where's your mission, how many students do you serve, what the cost, how does this fit in with the university? If you're doing a good job, it seems to me you would welcome this kind of scrutiny.
Well, I'm sure we'll hear the report and talk about it some more. After these messages, we're going to talk about asking the panel to tell us something we don't know.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
Does your North Carolina business or organization have a story to tell? I'm Richard Campbell, and at Carolina Broadcasting and Publishing, we help tell stories that connect you to the people who will respond. We take the time to understand our clients' needs and what makes them unique. We craft their stories through the efficient use of words, images, and videos that resonate with their desired audience. We also know that a good story is incomplete without a call to action. On video, on air, online, and in print, from concept to final production, no one can help tell your story more effectively or affordably than we can. For special introductory offers, visit carolinabroadcasting.com or call 919-832-1416. Again, that's carolinabroadcasting.com. Let us help tell your story today.
One in 5 North Carolinians can't buy healthy foods in their communities, increasing their risk of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and some forms of cancer. Learn more at accesshealthyfoodsnc.org.
All right, let's ask the panel to tell us something we don't know. Becki Gray.
During this last election, we heard a lot about voter suppression. What we've learned since the numbers and who voted, what that voting population looked like, is that voter participation went up, and it went up in those categories that people were worried about, African Americans and youth voters. So what we know is there was no voter suppression.
Tell us something we don't know.
Well, a special committee of the State Board of Education recently approved 2 pilot programs for virtual charters. That provision was snuck into the budget. Nobody knows who did it. One of the companies was K-12, which has had a lot of problems. Fascinatingly, the questions asked by the special committee, nobody asked either company about student achievement, which I thought was unbelievable.
John Hood, tell us something we don't know.
Speaking of student achievement, recent analysis came out of National Assessment of Educational Progress test scores over the last 10 years. The District of Columbia had the biggest gains in educational achievement in the United States. Tennessee did very well. North Carolina did not.
Brad, tell us something we don't know.
Secretary of Public Safety Frank Perry is creating a lot of political problems for the governor across the state with unhappy sheriffs and unhappy district attorneys, all to do with the SBI and some of the management decisions he's making right now. Former FBI agent doesn't like listening to a lot of input.
Well, I've got one this week. Our director, the whole time we've been on the air, 16 years, Clarence Williams, just recently celebrated and was honored for 48 years of continuous work with Capital Broadcasting, and also just had a birthday. So we salute Clarence as we head into this Christmas. Well, you've heard our spin on the issues of the day. To stay informed all during the week, give your feedback, read my weekly column, visit our website, ncspin.com, or catch NC Spin on Facebook. We hope you'll join us next week when we'll take on more issues of interest to the people of North Carolina, including our top stories of 2014. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.
Join us next week and get the spin on issues facing our state.